we're both social democrats with liberal values, and we kind of knew that. I think when I was shadowing Vince. I mean, I tended actually. I mean, I think it's often on the kind of technical detail as opposed to a lot of the principle of the things. Although I think there was a principal disagreement about the fiscal trajectory of that government. But I suppose by House of Commons standards, it's quite funny seeing it now. House of Commons standards, that was quite gentle.
Well, we were both doing our jobs. I was defending the government I was part of, and you were attacking it as an opposition spokesman. That's our roles.
3 parties in 6 months, Chuka. That's quite a turnover of parties.
Well, it's been quite a journey. My values and my principles have remained completely constant, but through the political volatility, you try and find the right way of promoting those values in a different and a difficult context. I left the Labour Party for reasons that I've talked about on this show before, and I won't rehearse. And my belief, having left the Labour Party, was that the millions of politically homeless people in the progressive centre ground of British politics wanted a new party. And I was wrong on that. And that was illustrated not just in the local elections, but in the European elections in Technicolor. I think what people wanted, and you can see that from the results, but also what people were telling me on the street, is we actually want people who sit in the progressive liberal centre ground of politics already to work much more closely together. And I reflected long and hard through the course of those elections and came to the very strong view I need to join the Liberal Democrats because they share my values. I have Liberal Democrat values, so what is the point in...
Did you persuade anybody to come with you, though, to the independent group and then Change UK? Because is there a little bit of element of I've thrown them into there and now I'm jumping...
Not really, because I think there was a general recognition that obviously Change UK, that I was part of briefly, but I think in the end we had a different view in how, going forward, we promote our values in a different setting. And I think people do want to see more politicians coming together and working across perhaps past differences and trying to forge a way through the chaos. And so that's why I've been on this journey, but I will not be changing parties again in my lifetime. That is it.
Now forever.
Yes, I am Lib Dem now forever.
Is there going to be an issue of trust for you, though, Chuka? Because when you're a politician, things go on record.
Yes.
You have criticised the Lib Dems.
I have, yes.
And you've criticised them and said, obviously, to promote that Labour being better. You've criticised Labour when you had to Change UK. You didn't join the Lib Dems before the latest round of European elections when you could have done and had a very strong Remain vote and been campaigning for that. So... it's going to be hard for people to trust you, isn't it?
Well, that's an absolutely fair question. But I think people like politicians who stick to their values and principles and put those things first before any tribal party political interest. And clearly that is what I've done. And the biggest issue in my constituency is Brexit. It's the most Remain constituency in the country. It scored the highest Remain vote in the 2016 referendum. And my constituents know that part of what drove me out of the Labour Party, in addition to the other terrible things happening within it, was the fact that it was sponsoring Brexit. And that was very much against the views of my constituency.
So your message has been the same, even though the party has changed.
Yeah, that's right. And then what drove me to join... part of what drove me to join the Liberal Democrats was the Brexit issue. And actually, if you look at what happened in my constituency... Labour, if you like, did pretty well when it was seen as being against the Brexit madness that we've got going on at the moment. And now in the most recent elections, actually, the Liberal Democrats won all but one of the wards in my constituency. So for my constituents, this Leave-Remain issue is the biggest issue. And actually, if you look more generally nationally, that is driving voting behaviour much more than party affiliation.
Of course it is. But people are going to say that it's because things are looking good for Lib Dems. When you're with Labour, there was an attempt, a vote of no confidence to try and get rid of you as a Labour MP.
There wasn't, actually.
Wasn't there? Well, there were lots of reports that was the case.
No, there wasn't in respect of me. I didn't face a vote of no confidence in my party. I didn't. But look, I mean, in the end, you've got to put your values and your principles first. And look, if political security and going up the greasy pole is what you want to do, you stay in one of the two main parties. When I left the Labour Party, I knew that I may actually in the future not end up being a Labour MP or MP at all, but I put my values before that.
Are you happy to have him on board?
Very much so, yeah. I mean, I endorse what he says. I mean, we had a good dialogue, really, over the last couple of years, and... it was clear that we shared the same values. The only disagreement was about the best way of getting there.
When this happened, when you came together, did you sit down with some mediators and say, right, we need to talk about all the things that Chuka, who said, because there's been some stuff, you can't trust a word that Vince Cable says on tuition fees, and then what you've said, was there sort of, we need to work
Well, we
this
did
out
discover that some of those things actually been made up.
because there was a lot that
Didn't
weren't
actually
true,
say
weren't they?
them. Yeah, I mean, there had been things said, but, you know, that is the nature of politics. But it doesn't disguise the fact that, you know, beneath those comments, there is a fundamentally very similar outlook.
And does this mean as well, of course, because it's quite a coup to get somebody as prominent as Chuka to come over to the Lib Dems, it makes a very, very strong point publicly that you now have someone on the inside who knows a few other Labour MPs who may be on the verge, who may be thinking, I really want to remain. Maybe they might come as well. Is there sort of a targeted sort of moment now for the Lib Dems to look and say we could pick off a few more of their MPs?
Well, I think that kind of conversation has been going on for quite a long time, and with Conservatives too. I mean, a lot of those are very unhappy bunnies at the moment, particularly with prospect of Boris Johnson. And, yeah, we are talking to them, and I can't predict exactly what will happen, but I think there will be a movement in our direction.
You joined the Liberal Democrats on June the 13th. The deadline for leadership submissions to the Liberal Democrats was June the 7th. So close. So close, Chuka. Were you not tempted to just jump a bit earlier and then you could have gone for leader?
Like I said, this wasn't about, you know, career advancement or becoming a leader or anything like that. It was very much what is the best thing to do in the national interest and in my community's interests. And I think, look, you know, the public are faced with a choice between Jeremy Corbyn on the one hand and Boris Johnson on the other, which I think is unacceptable. So we have to make sure that we have the very best alternative, which can marry together social justice, economic competence, deal with the climate change crisis at the next election. And I want to do all I can to help whoever becomes our leader. And look, take a step back. We're on the cusp of having Boris Johnson, a man who's come out with racist statements about black and Asian people, you know, calling black people pickaninnies, having watermelon smiles, only, you know, in the last 12 months, comparing Muslim women to letterboxes, on the cusp of becoming the Prime Minister of our country. What does that say about this country and how politics comes to normalise that kind of behaviour and hatred? It just shows what an appalling state British politics is in, and that's why we've got to smash this two-party system, frankly, and fix it and focus on the real things that your viewers want us to deal with, which are many of the problems that cause people to vote for Brexit in the first place. But I honestly, you know, it's reported Boris Johnson's about to become the leader and Prime Minister. And somehow we forget all of these past statements. And I'm fed up when I've raised these issues, people go, oh, well, that was in the past.
I think it says more about the Tory party than it does about the country.
Well, let's. I mean, in terms of the situation and the way things are at the moment, there was some footage that's emerged. I'm sure you've seen it of Mark Field MP last night.
What we didn't see were the kind of 5 seconds leading up to it as to whether he had time to take on board that this was a peaceful protester, in which case he seriously overreacted, or whether it was just an instinctive reaction to somebody he thought was a threat. We just don't know that. But he has apologised profusely, and I would have thought that was sufficient.
I mean, one of the questions is where...
I think you tweeted saying you think it's assault.
Well, I thought it was unacceptable. I thought it was disproportionate. Usually, certainly when a Prime Minister... I've been around, you know, when you've been around when a Prime Minister's been giving a speech, or the Defence Secretary or the Chancellor or the Home Secretary who have a personal protection team, they're usually very close by, one on either side. And when you look at the footage there that you had, there is no sign of a detective, a personal protection officer, anywhere in that shot. And to be honest, given the threat that we all face now, you would expect them to be close enough to be able to intervene. It shouldn't be... The job of Mark Field, a minister, is not to do that.
No.
There are police people who are trained to do that.